the first thing out of the way. I started using R about a year and a half ago when I started my business analytics master's program. So it is crazy for me to be up here presenting something to an R user group. So if I seem nervous at any point, you know why. Anyway, my name is Luke Morris, and I'm here to talk to you about college basketball, which is my biggest hobby, even though I suck at basketball. So let's get the elephant out of the room. Not everybody's a sports person, but I promise there's something here for everybody. One thing that you're going to see in this presentation is looking at some really good uses of the PageRank algorithm to get an idea of how a team works, especially when it comes on offense and how people pass the ball to each other for assists and scores. There's also some really good data visualization that is done as part of this package, and it's something that I use every day. I use it after every game. I went to Kansas, so I'm a big Kansas fan, so every game that they play afterward, I'm tweeting out 4 or 5 different charts from it. It's just something that I'm nerdy and I do. On top of that, one of the reasons that I really love this package is it's the way that I taught myself R. There's a lot of times during my master's program that, I was asked to do something related to analytics about finance and stuff that I didn't care about, and there'd be me crying in the corner like I don't understand what I'm doing. But when I would start toying around with this hobby, all of a sudden, I could wrap my brain around the idea of, okay, well, here's something that I'm going to do with it. And that's how I made my journey into R. So, yeah, one of these was taking an undergrad. Anyway, I grew up in Kansas, and that explains why I'm a Jayhawk fan and also obnoxious when it comes to being a college basketball fan, because I think we've never not made the tournament in my 32-year life. Before I got into analytics, I was a journalist for 10 years. And toward the end of that part of my career, I started getting into a lot of the workings of our websites. And a lot of that involved, tweaking headlines and SEO and everything to get an idea of, okay, well, what works online? And so that's where kind of the analytics aha moment happened. And I started going back to school, and I got this master's program in business analytics. And about 6 months ago, I started at Cedars-Sinai in their emergency department as the data analyst. Now that's enough about me. We're here to talk about the package, ncaahoopR. It was created by Luke Benz, who is a biostats person. He's a data scientist out on the East Coast. I can't remember what state. Sorry, Luke. But while he was the president of the Yale student sports, whatever you call the stats club, I should know that. But anyway, the great thing about this is it really served college basketball fans who, we don't get as much, data out there as necessarily NBA fans do. Basically, the NBA is data rich and has been very forward about just putting things out there for the public. The NCAA, not so much. So a lot of this, what you see in this package is scraped from ESPN box scores. So it's kind of, it's been a homebrew. It's still, you can only grab it on GitHub. It's not on Cran. It's just it's a hobbyist thing. And like I said, this is how I really found my way to learn R. It was basically, I found my passion, and it was tied to something that I could care about, and I ran from there, and I learned how to read documentation as a result. And now I have a job. And it's not in journalism, it pays. All right, so let's get into what you can actually do with hoopR. Well, ncaahoopR. Like I said, a lot of the things are scraped from ESPN's website. So if you go to ESPN's website, you'll always see like a box score for every game, and it gives you your basic stats. And for a lot of the high major games, like your Power 5 teams, it also has X and Y position of every shot. So if you want to go back and get shot charts, you can as well. But looking at this, I'm trying to give you an idea of how easy it is to grab play-by-play data just within ncaahoopR. All you have to do is call the library, and then after that, you go ahead and you ask it to get the play-by-play for you, and you add your team. And the call is season, but you can either use the actual season, or these are the last 9 digits in an ESPN box score. And there's actually a command that you can use that's just get game IDs and team equals USC, season equals, then the default's going to be the current season, but if you wanted to do season equals 2018-19, that would first yank all of those 9-digit box, or all of those 9-digit IDs, and then from there you could do get PvP. And this is what it looks like when you scrape the play-by-play for one game. So you see you get a wealth of different information. So a lot of this, you can either use the plotting that's within the package, or you can even, combine this with dplyr, and anything you want to toy with, you can go in there. For example, one thing that I will do a lot, if I want to look at just assisted baskets for a team, I will go in and say, give me everything that is not a free throw, because there's a free throw down there on the bottom line. Everything that is a shot, so it has a shooter, and it has to be a Kansas shot, so shot team would be Kansas. But on top of doing things with dplyr, you can also just use a lot of the built-in plotting, and a lot of these are just really fun to play with. One thing is win probability, which if anybody is an actual statistician, you're like about to kill me right now for even mentioning win probability, because I know a lot of people hate it. It's just, it doesn't tell you very much in a lot of circles, especially when you can actually be 99.9% certain of winning a game, and then there's a giant switch, and lo and behold, it wasn't really 99.9%. But like I said, it takes literally 3 calls, and I've got what I want for one single game. And this was UCLA USC back on January 11th. Sorry, any Bruins fans, if you won the second game, I don't know. And the win probabilities have actually become part of a meme online. So I don't know if you remember, a couple years ago, there was a game between Nevada and Cincinnati where I believe Cincinnati was up 22 points. And like I said, 99% chance of winning right around here. That was a 22-point lead. But then all of a sudden, I think it was 4 minutes, almost 5 minutes, so Cincinnati could not hit a field goal, and Nevada got its ish together. And so this is basically some of the memes that came out of it. Date going well. Have you read Ayn Rand? I don't know if you can read this one. It's the moment the waiter asks if you want to see a dessert menu, and you open your mouth and say yes, and your date says, "No, I think we're good." Don't do that. All right, here's another way to kind of visualize a game. It's game flow. It's basically following these. It's a step chart of the score of the game. So it doesn't really tell you that much beyond what you usually would see. And this is one that's also on ESPN's website if you go there, but it's one of those, if you want to brew it yourself, you can. This is a little bit more interesting, and since we're in Irvine, I said to give UCI a shout out. Also, thank you for beating our little brother Kansas State last year in the tournament. Just saying. This is an assist network, and this is what I was telling you is using a lot of the PageRank algorithm logic. So what you're seeing here is the arrows are showing you the direction that the ball is being passed in on shots. So what we're seeing here is John Edgar Jr. at least gave one pass to Isaiah Lee during the game in question, and you see some of the lines are thicker than the others. That is a indication of a more frequent connection between the two players. So I know that the numbers on this one aren't quite indicative of where the different scores are, but that 3 should go between Brad Green and Evan Leonard. And the thickness also keys you off to that. But on top of that, it's probably too small to see on here, but you actually get a look at the assist frequency leader, PageRank MVP, which would be kind of for the most part, it ends up being the person who scores the most, and that is Isaiah Lee. And you have an authority score, which is the most prolific. Oh no, sorry, the hub score MVP, which is the most prolific passer, and that ended up being Brad Green, even though it was mostly to Evan Leonard. And if you really want to dive in, you can also get the results of this printed out onto the console. And if that's not pretty enough for you, you can do it as a circle. So that one is probably a little busy for most people, but this one, this is what I do a lot, even on my own Basically, I want to look at an individual player's assist network. Okay, and this is an idea. I'm getting who. Sorry, I'm just gonna hold this. You get an idea of who he passes to and how often by the thickness of the line. You can't necessarily see the players' names. Sorry, I'm not used to microphones. But yeah, basically looking at the thickness tells you the frequency that they connect on assisted shots. And down here, unfortunately, this is the assisted shot. The ones that you don't see lines for are the assisted shots that he was the shooter for. Hopefully at one point we can get like a reverse version of this chart, and you can see, who's passing to him. Because, I mean, especially when it comes over to our big center at Kansas, it would be interesting to see where he's getting all of his assists from. Other things that you can do within this package, you can get a shot chart, and like I said, the caveat on this is a lot of times it ends up being, for the most part, Power 5 teams that are the only ones who can get this. But you can see here, this is Oklahoma State versus Kansas last month. Triangles are missed shots, dots are made shots, and we can also do this as a heat map for all the attempts. So what I'm seeing here is somebody at Kansas wanted to shoot a lot from the elbow, and we also have our big center who was scoring a lot in that game, whereas he appeared to be denying really close in here, so they had to take floaters for the most part. You can also look at your team, an individual team. You can look at their shot chart, or you can do it as a heat map. So basically, if you want to do more than one game, you just set up all those game IDs as a vector, and you just run with it. And you can even do one on your opponent's shots. So this is something that I will look at a lot and be like, okay, well, where are people dinging Kansas? And I see this a lot, and like I said, it indicates to me that our 7-foot center Udoka Azubuike, while I mean you're always going to have some layups in here, the idea that this flares out instead of this way is an indication that they're taking a lot of floaters before they get to him, because he's such a shot blocker and big presence down there. So here's some of the things that this has been used for. Like I said, all of this started out with Luke Benz, and he used it for his senior thesis, where he basically answered one of the timeless questions of, calling a timeout in the middle of a game when the opposite team is on a run, does it really affect anything if the coach calls a timeout? And he found that, within 5 minutes after calling the timeout, there's actually a bit of a 1.5 to 2.2 point change in what the score would typically be, and that's what you see here. And I've linked up his thesis and pretty much every other example I have in here in the notes if you want to go onto the GitHub and take a look at them. There's a lot of fantastic examples out there. If you ever look under the hashtag ncaahoopR, that's where we're all dropping everything and high-fiving each other. Fifth factor plots. He does a lot of things more looking at teams from a national context. Like a lot of what I like that he does is looking at, okay, well, how are these teams doing against the national average for shooting from such and such a position. So that's why you'll see green or red. It's like, are they doing better or worse than the average national team does from that spot? And then Matt Rain has taken it into, he's a big Dayton basketball nerd, which happens to be the perfect year for that because they're number 5 right now. They might even be number 4. But he also pulls things into Tableau and makes them even prettier. Or Suresh, you can do it in BI, Power BI if you want. This is a UConn fan and looking at people's true shooting percentages. Basically, you can chop things down any way you want. I actually created a Kansas season dashboard because I'm a giant nerd. So basically, my checkboxes, you can pick whatever games you want to look at. And among other things, you can choose whether or not to weight the 3-pointers in this assist network. So basically, by default, I have it weighted. So every time it's an assisted shot with a 3-pointer, it's 1.5 points. And if it's not if it's a 2-pointer, it's just 1. But if you turn that off, everything is 1. This minimum player inclusion, basically, they have to be in on at least where I have it set up to 0.1, they have to be in on at least 10% of the assisted baskets for whatever range of games you've selected. And I've made it to where you can even choose your own player if you want, or you can just do that giant, massive thing of like 60 colors that we saw earlier, if you choose nobody. And it also has the heat maps and/or just regular shot charts for offensive shots and shots against. Another thing that I've done is looking just at the locations of one player's assists. So what you're seeing here is, I believe I did this around the start of the new year. So Devon Dotson at that point had, I want to say, 60-some assists. And this is basically looking at everywhere that he passed the ball and somebody shot from. So the dots are where that person shot from after they were passed to by Dotson. And you can see here that he's been spreading it around to all kinds of players. And now that we're 2 months later into the season, I imagine this map is just even crazier now. Because I think he's also taken over the assist lead pretty massively. But one of the great things about ncaahoopR is that it just keeps growing. One of the things that Luke Benz does is he puts together not only historical stuff, but also he does season so far repos just so you're not having to go and scrape from ESPN the entire time. That's one thing, like when I go and look at my dashboard, is a lot of times it'll take 2 or 3 minutes for everything to load just because it's going and yanking every single box score down from ESPN every time. There's also some folks who helped with the mapping of the shot data, as well as adding in some box score info. I mean, like I said, this has been a lot of my learning process in R. I learned how to contribute to a package because of this. I saw that we only had, I think, like 150 colors for 150 teams, and I went out and just decided one day I'm going to go and finish off the other 300 some schools, or get it to where there were 353 Division I schools that we had all the team colors for. And I also added in Wikipedia links to the logos, so if you ever wanted to do something with GG image, you could go in and do it like you can see some other people do with Tableau. There's a couple other complementary packages I just want to mention really quick. If you want to do a lot of analyzing team lineups, Big Ball R is definitely one to look at. I haven't done much with it, but I mean, it's something I will do in the off season, as well as looking into a lot of the historic stuff for Kansas. And one thing that just came out from Scott Nestler is ncaahoopR, so now women's college basketball gets some attention too, so just in time for the women's Final Four as well. And so I know in the lead up to this I promised that there would be some insight into the tournament. So on top of doing your own analysis with ncaahoopR and ncaahoopR, some places you can look are, again, Luke Benz does his own predictions and bracketology on and he has a Shiny app that he does it in. So that's fun to look at. The gold standard for analytics in college basketball is Ken Pomeroy. And his site, it comes out, if you pay for it, it's $20 a year, but around Selection Sunday, he'll usually free up a bunch of stuff. And that's where a lot of people will look for their matchups. Bart Torvik is pretty much a free version of Ken Pom. He uses an older version. I'm not sure I'm totally accurate on that, but basically his algorithm is similar to what Ken Pom's used to be before he changed it a few years back. And so a lot of people will look at that. Hoop Vision is this really smart guy who started a newsletter after being a video breakdown scout for, I don't remember which team, but he puts out, on top of doing a bunch of R plots, he also does these really smart video breakdowns, and I just love to watch them. On top of that, there's NCAA's own net ranking that they started last year, and I'll put it this way, it's still learning. Anyway, I know not everybody's a sports person, but I hope I gave you something worth paying attention to here. So thank you very much, and rock Chuck Day. Any questions?
Do they have something similar for the NBA?
Yeah, the NBA is actually very data rich, and I think they have all kinds of platforms where they supply their own data, whereas this we're having to scrape from is having to scrape from ESPN. Mm-hmm. So I would say that the NBA actually has better resources to do this from. Like, I know, I think it's Second Spectrum that's here in LA, they do a lot of, in the stadiums, they will have like a kajillion cameras that capture where the players are. If you've ever seen the next gen analytics for the NFL, you'll see like people use GG Animate to trace back out the play on Twitter.
Yeah.
That's what they're using, is a lot of that camera
Right.
tracking. Yes?
Any relation to Marcus and Marquis?
They did go to Kansas,
Last
but,
name Morris.
and the last name is Morris, but unfortunately no, though I do, jokingly say that's my cuz sometimes, yeah. Oh, and if you ever want to try to do your own team's dashboard, I've put my version up on a GitHub that somebody can just rip, sub out the players, sub out the game IDs, and go for it. And like I said,
Some of those links up on the Meetup
yeah.
or the deck.
Yeah, the deck is going to be on the Meetup GitHub, and other stuff is on my GitHub. Everything that's in the, basically the slides are linked, so you can jump from there.
I know nothing about college hoops, but if it can help me win money at the office.
Fair enough. I know plenty of people whose, like spouses have won, and they're like, really? They picked based on, mascot. It works.
Team color.
Well, the Hokies have some pretty unique ones. So.
Yeah, I knew those.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm not this nervous anymore.